Hey, gang. I will be right back. I just got to take myself out of here real quick. I actually dozed off on the couch while I was watching television, and I know better than to do that. But my blood sugar is feeling a little bit low, so let me take myself out of the stream real quick, and I'm going to go grab something, and I will be right back. Okay, gang, I'm back now with a piece of homemade peanut butter fudge in hand. So this should fix me right up in a couple of minutes. So I just didn't want to be on here and go completely out of it on you guys. That would not be fun for you guys to watch. It would not be fun for Steve to come back here and find me all passed out my computer either. So I'm going to continue to eat this, but I hope you're here for the It's a Wonderful Life watch along because that's what the movie is going to be tonight. Chris is going to be joining me here momentarily. Um, he's agreed to be my co host as we navigate through this wonderful Christmas classic that I'll tell you guys. I think I've told you guys and gals this before, but some people may not heard this story. A lot of people have watched this movie every year at Christmas time for a lot of years. It is a staple in a lot of homes around the holiday season. So, me, unfortunately, I don't know how this wonderful movie slipped under my radar for many, many years, but it did. And for whatever reason, I never watched it. I heard people talk about it. They'd say, "Oh, my family watched this, this, and this." And It's a Wonderful Life was always on those lists. And so I actually did not watch this film until after Steve and I were married. And we'd been married a few years before I ever watched it. And so I said, it's on Amazon. I'm going to watch it. We've got Amazon Prime. I'm just going to sit down and watch this. Absolutely fell in love with this movie. This movie is not only a wonderful, nearly perfect movie, but it has the perfect message for not only the Christmas season, but for any time. And so I was kicking myself actually for like missing out on this movie for so many years. Um, so now I want to share it with everybody. So whether you've seen this movie before or this is your first time watch, I want to welcome you to this very, very special watch along. Um, so I hope you guys and gals saw the little commercial for the horror double feature candles. You can pick those up on the Deadites on Deck shop at deaditesondeck.com. For $30, you get 2 candles, hot buttered popcorn and cola in exclusive packaging. I have made myself these candles and they smell like, if you like hot buttered popcorn and you like cola, these are going to be absolutely heavenly for you because I love mine that I made for myself. My dad always had a saying. He'd say, don't buy anything that you can't, use yourself or enjoy yourself if you're buying somebody a gift. So, uh, if you get these for somebody for a gift, you can enjoy them too if you're living in the same household. Say, hey, those hard double feature candles. You want to crack those babies out, and we'll burn those. I like burning mine together, so you got the scent of popcorn and you got the scent of cola going at the same time. I also have other things on the shop site. I have t-shirts, I have tote bags, I have mouse pads, I have other types of candles on there, and I do custom work. If you're not a horror fan, never fear. I can put your pets or your parents or your grandparents, your kids, your grandkids, if you don't mind sending me a picture of whomever you want to have on a t-shirt or a tote bag or a mouse pad or even a candle. Let's say you came up with a candle scent all on your own that I don't have on the shop. I will be glad to make that for you. All right. So I'm starting to come out of that low blood sugar haze. So that's always a good sign. And I've still got fudge left. So I also want to remind everybody before I add Chris, though, that because this is technically a live stream, it still counts if you want to give a $5 super chat or more tonight. You can throw your hat in the ring to pick a movie that I do a watch along for upcoming. Now, Steve and I, the Saturday after Christmas, which will be the 28th, December 28th, I believe, me and Steve are doing a special Roadhouse watch along. And this is for the original Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze, none of that Jake Gyllenhaal duty. I don't, if you like that version of Roadhouse, I'm not knocking you, but that version of Roadhouse is not my style. I like the original with Patrick Swayze and Sam Elliott and all those great people. So if you're in the mood for a little Roadhouse, me and Steve will have our adult beverages in tow as well. But that's not a have to thing if you're not a drinker. You can drink some, Coca-Cola or Mountain Dew or fruit punch or whatever you want to, or you can mix you up a drink that's a virgin version of an alcoholic drink, just without the alcohol, right? So that will be at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday, December 28th. And so now I'm going to go ahead and add Chris, and I'm a little bit behind on getting mine queued up or getting the movie queued up. So I will do that as well. But I'm going to go ahead and add Chris because he's been waiting patiently there. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Dana, how's it going?
Good. Now that I got a little sugar in me, I was a little.
Yeah, you gotta watch out there, Dana. You
I
take
know
care
it.
of yourself.
Yeah, definitely got to take care of myself, especially around the holidays, but at any time as well. Any kind of chronic illness that people deal with, you got to take care of that stuff. So,
Right.
Chris knows how that is. Chris doesn't have diabetes, as far as I know, but Chris does have epilepsy, and that's something
Yeah.
that you have to.
Well, I don't have diabetes yet, Dana. It could hit me, because like my family, it runs in my family. My mom has diabetes, and like pretty much everybody in her side of the family. So, but knock on wood, I've not got it yet. So,
And, and God willing, you will not. But the if there is anything good about having an illness like diabetes in this day and age, is that it is treatable. You
Yeah.
do have to watch it, and You can't go around having as much sugar as you want because that's not a good thing when you're diabetic. But there are times whenever your blood sugar could drop and you get to partake in it a little bit, and you can have it from time to time. There was always a misconception in years past that if you were diagnosed with diabetes, you could never ever have sugar ever again.
Mhm.
And that's just not true. You can, but you just have to, it's everything in moderation. It's just like with anything else. You can't
Right.
overdo it. Hey, Candace. I see Candace is in here. She's going to be joining us via chat tonight. So I'm glad to have Candace in here. And I hope we have a few more people as we um, go along. Chris, did you want to share like what your first? I kind of shared my first
Mhm.
introduction to It's a Wonderful Life. Did you want to share anything about your first watch of It's a Wonderful Life?
Yeah, mine is actually kind of similar to yours.
Okay.
So my dad would always watch this movie as I was growing up, and my mom would watch it too. Um, but it was just kind of always something in the background for me. While they were watching it, I wasn't really paying attention to it or anything, but I always knew like a lot of the um, more popular scenes, as it was like kind of like either parodied or just like kind of
Mhm.
covered in like best of like TV series and stuff like that. Like they would show like the best Christmas movies of all time, and they would show like little clips from the movie, and I would always know those, but didn't really know the context surrounding those scenes. Um, so it wasn't until probably I want to say the first year that me and Candace bought our home together,
Mhm.
which was back in 2021. Um, I want to say that was when I first ever really sit down and watch the movie, um, and like got the full like message from it, everything, like, and I could make a full like make a full opinion on how I felt about the movie. Um, so I have to say that, like I was kind of kicking myself. It's like, why did I wait so long to
Right.
watch this all the way through? And I mean, it's to me probably the greatest Christmas film of all time.
Mhm.
Um, and I went years thinking, different, like because I love you know, Gremlins is my favorite film of all time. And yes, it's a Christmas movie, but the whole Christmas like aspect of Gremlins is really not the main focus.
Mhm.
Um, so I wouldn't consider Gremlins the greatest Christmas film of all time. But
Right.
I would look at movies like, the Home Alone films or Christmas Vacation
Right.
or stuff like that as being like top tier Christmas film. But now after like I said, watching this all the way through and getting the full message of the film itself, um, I really have to put it as like the top is the greatest Christmas film of all time. It is, and not just one of the if somebody thinks different, that's great, but that's my opinion. That's what my thoughts are on it. But not only is it a great Christmas film, but it's also one of I think the greatest films of all time in any subgenre or whatever you want to call that.
Mhm.
Um, I really, I had been a fan of Jimmy Stewart
Oh yeah.
um, before even watching this because my favorite Jimmy Stewart film is actually Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window,
Yes.
and then all the other Hitchcock films that Jimmy Stewart did, like Vertigo and um, Rope and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So I really, I like those. And then he did this one film I really like. My dad introduced it to me. It was called Harvey, where he's like best friends with this imaginary rabbit.
Mhm.
I don't know if you've ever seen that one or not,
I have not seen that one. I need to watch that one.
but Candace is also a huge Jimmy Stewart fan. I remember we went to an estate sale one time, and we randomly found like this framed photo of Jimmy Stewart,
Wow.
and it hung on our wall for a while. But then as we were like doing some remodeling stuff, like I think it got boxed up, and we're not sure where it's at right about. Hopefully, we find it again because we would like to hang that up again. But
It'll be great when you're able to rediscover it again.
yeah, I can't. But like I love watching this film like every year now, ever since I watched it for the first time all the way through a few years ago. So, like you said earlier, it has become like a staple in many people's homes, including ours. And this will be my first time watching it with you, Dana. So,
Yes, yes. And with Candace in the chat, I mean, it's
Mhm.
like we're all three going to watch it together. And whoever else decides to come and hang out with us tonight as we
and,
watch
and
this.
I also want to apologize for if because I don't have the greatest lighting right now, and I don't. I guess you may be able to. I'm not sure if you can hear me very well or not, like because we had some issues with Noah's laptop, which we normally use for when we're doing the StreamYard stuff. But so we're having to use our other laptop. So like the camera's not as great on it as what Noah's Alienware laptop is.
Uh,
Um, and I had to kind of like put do some lighting here on the side here to just kind of like make it look a little bit better than what it was. Cause like
I don't
I
think it looks bad. It looks different than normal, but it doesn't look bad. And I can hear you real good, Chris.
okay. Okay, good. Cause I was really worried about that. I was like, oh, I was like, I hope the microphone will work as good on this laptop. And I said, I can already tell like the lighting is not great and like the camera quality is not great. So I'm gonna try to get and in the meantime, before while we're trying to get Noah's laptop fixed, I'm gonna try to get a like an external webcam or something that it's a little bit more high quality than the one it's inside
Right.
this laptop. Um, because as you can see, like there in my on my where my name is here, right below it, I have the link to my YouTube channel, which
Yep.
there's nothing on there right now, but like I just wanted to put that out there in case anybody wanted to go ahead and like subscribe to
Yeah.
that because I am starting that officially on January 1st, where I'm going to be trying to attempt to watch 500 at least 500 movies in an entire span of that
Now
year,
I'm
2025.
excited. I'm excited about that, Chris. And I'm loving that you're gonna do this, and I think you're gonna succeed. And I'm just as excited as can be to see where you're gonna go with this. Where you're
Well,
gonna take
I tell you, I don't want to really give anything away, but am have been working on this like every day for the past month or two. I have everything already set to. I know what movies I'm watching on the dates that I'm watching them.
Wow. Okay.
Um, there's going to be a lot of theme stuff, so there's going to be like weeks where it'll be like all themed around one thing.
Hmm.
There's going to be like stuff like how we're doing with It's a Wonderful Life because it's around Christmas time. I'm going to be doing like a lot of different Christmas movies, like next December. So that's a while. It's a year away, guys. But like I said, I have the entire year planned out of all these films I'm going to watch, and so I'm trying to get at least 500. And you never know, I might even go over that. But that's just my goal right now is try to get through them as at least 500 because I've never done that before. I don't even think I've even sit and watched 100 movies in one year
Hmm.
before. So this is going to be kind of like pretty crazy. So it's got to be 500 in 1 year.
It sounds fun too, though, and vicious and stuff like that. And I think that's the way. you've got to be with these YouTube channels. You've got
Mhm.
to have a little bit of ambition in there. Otherwise, things will start to take precedence over the YouTube channel. But you can't let the YouTube channel encompass your entire life, because
Right, yeah,
I
like,
caught
there's
myself, getting into that mindset
oh,
there.
yeah, definitely. I've got it set up that way too, like, because I'm not gonna be releasing stuff every day, but,
Mhm.
like, I'm gonna probably look it's gonna be, like, every other day, and I'm gonna be doing probably, maybe, like, 2 to 3 movies, maybe 4, per video that I put out.
Right.
And over time that's going to add up, and I'm going to try to get there the best I can, but like it's going to be interesting to say the least.
Now I'll tell everybody where I am. I am using the Blu-ray that's in my 4K set for It's a Wonderful Life, and I have mine queued up about 12 seconds in. The bell at the beginning that is ringing, that is currently what is on my screen now. So everybody that's watching along with me and Chris tonight, if you want to try to get yours um, queued up kind of to where we're going to be, and me and Chris will try our best to be as in sync as we possibly can. Now, Chris, are you watching a Blu-ray, or are you watching?
No, I actually got it pulled up here on Amazon Prime Video.
Gotcha.
And it's the black and white version is the one that I'm watching. Which I don't think it really matters. It's the same movie whether it's black and white or the color version. Which me
I
that's
think it's
amazing.
just a matter of choice. If you want to watch the black and white
Hmm.
and you have access to it, that's fine. But it is the same movie, as Chris says.
Right.
It is the same movie.
But I will say that me and Candace have watched the colorized version of it,
I have to.
and I mean, I thought they did a pretty good job on colorizing the film. I mean, it feels a little bit different because, like, the times that we have usually watched it is the black and white version, and I think that's the one. If you've never seen the film before, you need to watch the black and white
Right.
version just to kind of get the full effect of the era that the film came out in and all that. So yeah, I mean, it just has that kind of like um, I don't know, I can't describe the feeling. Like like when you watch like a Universal monster movie
Yeah.
and just how it's all those are in black and white and it's kind of set in that whole time frame that those films came out. It kind of like that's how it was normally for most of those films.
Mhm.
Um, it would feel a little bit different to me if I was watching like a colorized version of Frankenstein. I
Yeah,
don't.
yeah, definitely. And like with something like The Wizard of Oz, where when Dorothy is in Kansas, everything is kind of dull and drab, and all
Mhm.
that's in black and white. And bam, when she goes to Oz, everything's in color. It's in bright, vivid, technicolor. And I think there, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but aren't there some versions of Wizard of Oz floating around that are completely colorized now, where all of
I
it's
don't know.
colorized?
I
Because
don't
I
know.
thought
I'll have to
there
look.
was at one time, but if anybody knows for sure and that I'm wrong, I can take the criticism. You can say, "Hey, Dana, you're wrong. There's no complete colorized
I
version."
don't. If there is, I'm not aware of it, but
Okay.
could
Uh,
be.
but they have colorized a lot of things over the years that have been purely black and white. Um, but I'm with Chris on this. If you've never seen It's a Wonderful Life, it would be preferable the first time you watch it if you watch it in the black and white version. But nobody's going to kick you out of this watch along if you only have access to the colorized version, because that may be the case. I think Prime has both the colorized and the black and white version. I think you could pick.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
But I did want to read Candace's. I didn't want to leave her out before we get started here. She said it was a yearly watch for her dad and her, and she also did mention that Harvey is a great movie. I'm going to have to get that one and watch it or find a copy of it. Um, and Candace says he was one of my dad's favorites as well. Talking about Jimmy Stewart. One of his favorites was a film called The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, which is a
Mhm.
movie I haven't seen either, but that's one that I have heard of.
And that's another that's a I'm glad she brought that up because that's another thing with Jimmy Stewart is that he was like if you were a Western fan, he was very well known in the whole Western genre. Like I think that's why my dad was such a big fan because my dad's a big Western guy,
My
and
dad is too.
I think that's why he was such a big fan of Jimmy Stewart. Especially there was a film that he was in. I think it was called Shane. And
My
my
cousin Shane was named after that movie.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Yeah,
he
my
was.
dad would watch it all the time. I remember that.
Yeah, I did not know that for a lot of years about my cousin Shane, but I heard my mom and dad talking that Shane's parents, my aunt and uncle, had seen that movie, I guess before, not long before Shane was born, and they loved that movie. So hence him being named Shane when
Mm,
he was born.
that's cool.
Uh, Candace says John Wayne is in it as well.
Yeah.
And she also says her dad loved John Ford. John Ford was always an incredible actor as well. I mean,
Mhm.
we're talking about some heavy hitters here. We're talking about Jimmy Stewart, John Wayne, John Ford. These are classic heavy hitter guys in
Mhm.
the acting world. And I would, some people might say, but my dad was always a huge fan of Clint Eastwood too. And
Oh, yeah.
he made me, a huge fan of Clint Eastwood, watching things like Hang 'em High and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly and stuff like that. And of course, the Dirty Harry movies with Clint
Mhm.
Eastwood as well. Every Which Way But Loose, Any Which Way You Can. The movies with Clyde the orangutan. I always love those movies as well.
And since you brought up Clint Eastwood, my favorite movie that Clint Eastwood was ever in was like more of a thriller movie, kind of thriller suspense, called Play Misty for Me.
Play Misty for me. That is one of my favorites too, Chris. I'm glad you brought that
I
up.
love it. I love that movie.
That is absolutely a fantastic movie and a precursor to movies that were similar that came after, like Fatal Attraction, for
Mhm.
instance, because it takes the stalking, don't have a one night stand with a woman that you don't really know that well and then try to
Right.
push her to the side because you might end up like Clint Eastwood and play Misty for me, or you might end up like Michael Douglas and play the Fatal Attraction.
Right.
So just remember that, guys. One night stands could be murder, literally, for you and anybody around you. So, um, but I think we'll go ahead and get started with this because this is a little bit longer movie. It's not going to seem like it because
I
it's such a good movie,
think it's a
but
little over 2 hours, I believe.
maybe 2 hours and 10 minutes or
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, 130 minutes. That's what it's listed as. So we'll go ahead and do the countdown, and we'll go ahead and get started with this. So here we go. 3, 2, 1. Press play, and we're off and running. We've got the Liberty Films presents. And I love the way this comes on too. It's like a children's book. It has
Mhm.
Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life. And Lionel Barrymore is in this movie too, of the famous or infamous, whichever way you want to look at it, Barrymore family.
So he's related to Drew Barrymore?
I think I want to say that might be her grandfather.
Oh wow. That's new to me. I didn't know that.
And you know, Chris mentioned National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation a little bit earlier. There is a tie-in with this movie for Christmas Vacation because Rusty is watching the end of It's a Wonderful Life
Ah,
in
that's
one of the
true.
scenes. I know that's not real snow, but it it looks so beautiful. I'd love to be having a little bit of that snow right now. And if you've got your sound going, of course, me and Chris can't have our sound going because YouTube would ding us. Um, but if you have your sound going, you are hearing the voices of the people in Bedford Falls who are asking God to help their friend George Bailey, or in the case of George's family, his mother is praying for him, his wife is praying for him, his children are praying for him. And now again, if you have the sound going, you are hearing uh, the heads of heaven, I guess you would say, um, who are talking about which angel they're wanting to send down to help George. So they have chosen Clarence. Clarence needs to get his wings. And so to get his wings, he has to help someone. So Clarence, we find out, has been waiting 200 years to get his wings. That's a long time.
Maybe time works different in heaven, where 200 years is not the same time frame as 200 years on
Maybe
Earth.
it's like 2 years there in heaven.
Maybe, yeah. Never know. Like, guess we'll never know until.
So we're seeing George as a boy.
Mhm.
And this, they're just kids, but all I could think of is, oh, this is extremely dangerous what they're doing because they're sledding down a hill and going onto I guess, an icy pond.
Mhm.
And, uh, that could be some thin ice there. So George's brother, Harry, is going sledding, and they're sledding on shovels.
Yeah.
I've never seen that done. And unfortunately, Harry goes past the safe area and goes into the water, the freezing water.
Well, the year was 1919, so I mean, I guess they didn't have typical sleds yet, so they had to
Right. They had to
they had
make
to
their
do what they
own
could
or use what
find.
they get. So they're seeing Mr. Potter there, who's the richest and the meanest man in town. And there was the introduction to Mary as a child.
Mhm.
And George is going to his job, his part-time job. Very ambitious kid at that age to have a job. And he's working for the pharmacist or the druggist, whatever you would call them. And there is the introduction to Violet as well. And we're going to see how Violet and Mary turn out here in a little bit when we fast forward a little bit. I love this scene though because this is typical kid behavior. Because you're going to see Mary just stuck out her tongue at Violet when Violet had her back turned. Hey, TJ. TJ says, I like that Gremlins ripped this off. I mean, paid homage to it, LOL. And it did. It kind of did in some ways.
How? I can't see. I can't see the
Well, I
similarity.
mean, I mean, not exactly, but I think what I take from it, Chris, is like the small town life and the maybe not the exact storyline of somebody having all these bad things happen to them until they just can't take it anymore. But I think TJ, are you talking about like the small town life, or is there something more specific that you're talking about?
This is the
He said,
winter small town setting, the mean rich old man. Well, I mean that kind of whole like thing is used in a lot of films. I mean, look at the Christmas Carol. If you want to look at, that go
mhm.
even further back than It's a Wonderful Life. You got Scrooge, who was like this mean old rich man. So if you want to say that Gremlins ripped off It's a Wonderful Life, then It's a Wonderful
It's
Life ripped off A Christmas Carol.
yeah, right. Everything I everything that's great to one generation, I think in one way or another, it has, if we want to be nice, we'll say paid homage to. If we
Mhm,
want to be explicit, we can say it ripped it off. But I think that happens with most popular storylines.
mhm.
Somebody sees something that works and they kind of add their own spin to it.
Yeah. Hey. Oh, yeah. There you go. Thanks.
And there was Candace. We saw
Yeah.
Candace real quick.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. See you. Love you. Um, yeah, she was reading my phone. Sorry.
That's okay. So I got sidetracked a little bit, but George is wanting to go speak to his father, and his father's in the middle of a meeting with old Mr. Potter. So, and the bank examiner's on the phone. But George has discovered that Mr. Gower, the druggist, has just found out that his son died of pneumonia. He had gotten a telegram, and George had seen the telegram. And Mr. Gower has become confused and all consumed with grief that he's accidentally put poison in pills and is telling George to go deliver these pills to a person that's sick, a boy that's sick. And George is desperately wanting to speak to his father to tell him about it. And like I said, his father's embroiled in a meeting with old Mr. Potter. So George does not take the pills to the family, thank goodness. Instead, he goes back to Mr. Gower's drugstore, and Mr. Gower is slapping him on his ear that was injured whenever George saved his brother Harry. And so poor George thinks that Mr. Gower's going to beat him in his ear again. He's not my sore ear. So now we fast forwarded to George as a young man who is planning on going um, to see the world. And I'll tell you a funny story. The first time I saw this and it paused, thought something was wrong with the movie until I realized that, oh, it's like the angels are pausing it so they can, discuss George a little bit more before they move on. And I could not think of anybody more perfect to play this role of George Bailey as an adult or a young man than Jimmy Stewart. He just completely encapsulates this character.
Mm.
So we find out that Mr. Gower, the druggist, purchased this suitcase for George. But as we're soon going to realize that every time George thinks he's going to make great strides in his life, something happens. And there is Violet as a young woman. And yes, men are dogs because they got to look at a pretty girl in a pretty dress. And I also like the fact that we have a Bert and Ernie in this movie as well. Hope everybody caught that. And I love it that their housekeeper is saying, that's why all babies should be girls. She's the boys are upstairs, rough housing and shaking the chandelier and, acting silly as boys will sometimes. Girls can act silly too. And I guess Harry's wanting to take his mom's good china. to the graduation party.
I always wondered those pictures on the wall behind his dad, if those are just pictures or those are actual butterflies. Like, have you
Oh,
ever seen those? Like where kind of like when they do like the
it's like taxidermy or
yeah, that's
something like that.
taxidermy. Like have because I've seen like there used to be a person that used to set up at conventions that would have a lot of like taxidermy, like insects, and they had like one with like a bats, and I even seen the ones with like butterflies like that. So
Yeah,
I always wondered like that in that scene, like if that was just a picture they had on the wall, or those were actually taxidermy
right.
butterflies.
That's a good question. I don't know. It could be that maybe George or maybe Harry did a little taxidermy or something and
Possibly.
created those. So I'm assuming that based on what George is saying here about what he wants to
Hmm.
do when he finally gets out of college is to be an architect because he's talking about building buildings and bridges and all of those things. And we see that George is like a lot of young people. They want to be ambitious. They want to get out and see the world. They want to make a difference. And a lot of young people feel like I felt that way. I felt that I had to get out of my little small town before anything would ever happen, would before the ball would get rolling. Now, not everybody is given the opportunity to get out of their small towns, and we're going to see what happens to George throughout the course of this movie, and
Yeah,
we're going to find out if he ever gets to leave his small town. But I
and
think all young people go through that.
yeah, it's like that for a lot of people. You know, where me and Candace live in Hazard, um, it to a lot of people, Hazard is considered a small town.
Mhm.
Um, and if you compare it to the bigger cities like across the country, even the cities just in Kentucky, like Lexington or Louisville, Hazard is would be looked at as a small town, but like for me, I look my perspective of it is a little bit different because where I actually grew up and is like a very small town where
Right.
there was nothing like within like uh, well, there was really nothing around where I lived. Like, like here in Hazard, we have like, restaurants and stores like Walmart and things like that, all around us, like within just a few minutes driving distance from our home. Where I grew up, it was a lot different. There was nothing around us. We were traveling at least 30-35 minutes, before we got to
You were
anything.
kinda like me because I grew up out in the sticks. That's
Yeah,
where my
basically. Yeah.
parents' house was. And, we're soon gonna see I just wanna bring this up before it gets to that part. We're soon gonna see, one of the little rascals, uh, in a scene coming up here. We're actually gonna see Alfalfa. I'm gonna see if y'all can pick out Alfalfa here, coming up. Because George is being asked by one of his friends to dance with Mary. uh, and that is the grown up Mary now, played by Donna Reed. And everybody see Alfalfa there
Mhm.
standing beside Mary? We may have a little noise here. Sorry about that, folks. Oh, it's never a dull moment around the Benningfield household. You got dogs coming through here at all times. Coming up is one of my favorite scenes in the film. There's a lot of favorite scenes in this film, though, for me. Of course, I couldn't even begin to dance like this. I'm not a dancer.
It's funny how dance has just evolved
Mm,
over, the different generations and decades, and because like I think this was like the Charleston they were doing back then in this time, and just like it's just over time it's just gotten, and I couldn't even tell you what kind of dances that exist this day and age, like because like I could remember the stuff when I was growing up in the 90s and everything, like
right.
even the Macarena was like one of the things in the 90s,
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and like I said, I'm not hip to that kind of stuff nowadays. So
No, even, bands and musicians, they're in the 90s. I kept up with a lot of stuff. But then the longer it went on, I just kind of, it just slipped all under my radar. So I depend on people like Candace, who, for instance, introduced me to Youngblood.
mhm.
Um, if she hadn't said anything, I probably would have never heard of him. So we're seeing that the floor is opening up and there is a pool, and oops, there they went into the water.
It's just funny because like they are oblivious that the floor was opening up, and like they think when the people are screaming, they're like, he says, "Oh, we must be good." Or something.
Really be good. And now everybody is jumping in the pool. Even the
Mhm.
guy that opened the floor up, which the one guy gave Alfalfa the key, and they opened the floor up. So they're jumping in, and this guy here, he was telling them to get out there, and then he jumps in there. So, and it's clear that a lot of these, well, probably all the scenes are sets. But the way that they are designed and set up and all of this is just wonderful.
And I don't know if you've ever seen the Jim Carrey movie Bruce Almighty or not, but
Yeah, it's been a while, but I have seen
but
it.
there is a reference to this scene that we're watching in Bruce Almighty. When he's talking to Mary, he says, "You want the moon?" So I'll last on the moon for so and like, in Bruce Almighty, Jim Carrey has the power of God basically,
Right.
and there's a part where like he's at the window with Jennifer Aniston, and he like when she's not looking, he like has like a pretend lasso, and he pulls the moon closer to the
Mhm.
window, so it looks really big. And she's like, "Oh wow," So and I always assumed that it was a reference to "It's a Wonderful Life," but I could be wrong.
I It fits. Now, this this is another one of my favorite scenes. This thing is just chock full of favorite scenes, but um, they're almost we're going to kiss there. You could just feel that, and there's going to come up a scene where her robe is going to get hung on something and come off. And we don't see anything, but it's a very funny scene. And I don't know about Chris, but Chris, do you feel like that scene that's coming up where the robe slips off of her, if that was risque for this time period?
I mean, you could look at it like that. Yeah, I think so.
And then, of course, Jimmy Stewart has that classic line. This is a very interesting situation. I can't say it like he does, but it's just so funny.
And with this scene and what eventually uh, comes later in the film, where this this home, this house that they're standing in front of, and they're throwing like these rocks stuff,
Mhm.
would not to spoil the film for anybody that hasn't seen, but this has eventually become their home. Um, it kind of just hit, you know, no pun intended, it hit home with me because when I watched this, for the first time all the way through with Candace, we it was shortly after we had purchased our home together,
Oh,
and and we had just struggled for so long, and we eventually things all fell into place, and we were able to buy our home, first home together, and we'll probably what will be our forever home. um, and so it gets me a little bit emotional when I see this film and I think about that.
and I think everybody that loves this film as much as me and you do, Chris, and as much as Candace does, I think we all have scenes that really pull at us. Some scenes a little more than others. Um, Alex is in here. Hey, Alex. And Alex is asking, out of all the Christmas movies, which one do you like? I guess, which one do I like the most? That's a hard one for me, but this one's got to be at the top of the list now. Before I had seen this one, I probably would have had another one at the top of the list. But this one is probably going to.
There are so many Christmas films out. I mean, like I said earlier, to me, I feel like this is the greatest Christmas film of all time. But there's just so many. I mean, you could look at it, you could categorize Christmas films from like dramas, comedies, horror, because there's all different subgenres of film that you know cover the whole Christmas holiday. Um, you know, uh, like if you look at horror, you have Black Christmas, you have Silent Night, Deadly Night, you have Christmas Evil, you have Santa's Sleigh. I don't know if you've ever seen that or not, Dana. But
I have not seen that one, but I know
it
exactly
has
what
the
you're talking
wrestler Bill Goldberg in that, and there's just so many, but like for me, there's just so many Christmas films I like. You look at the animated films, like the
about.
Rankin Bass films, like they do, like Santa Claus is Coming to Town, A Year Without a Santa Claus, Little Drummer Boy, stuff like that.
Frosty the
So,
Snowman and
and then
all those.
even like the Peanuts
Yeah,
ones, like
the Charlie
with
Brown.
Charlie Brown, like but there's just so many, so many Christmas films I love. Christmas Vacation, Gremlins. Is my favorite film of all time. But it's also has that it's based around the Christmas holiday. Ernest Saves Christmas.
Yeah.
Um, I just what me and Candace, and this film came out in 2015, but me and Candace just watched it for the first time like a week or two ago, and it's Krampus. And I was really taken by surprise by that film
Yeah.
because I didn't really know anything about it, and we ended up loving it. We really did, and it was just so different because it is like a horror film, but it has like comedy elements to it,
Right.
and several of the actors in the film are like typically comedy actors,
Yeah.
but they're in this horror film setting. So it was, yeah, it was. I think that's going to be like one that I'm going to watch yearly from now on too. Is Krampus.
And then there are some movies where the entire movie does not take place at Christmas time,
Mm.
but like core elements of the movie take place at Christmas time. For instance, The Sure Thing with Daphne Zuniga and John Cusack. The bulk of the main content of that film takes place during the Christmas holiday, like the Christmas vacation from
Mhm.
college. And I love I love that movie. When Harry Met Sally has some core scenes that take place during Christmas time and also New Year's. And that's another one that I like to watch around this time as well. So I'd almost have to cheat, or maybe some people wouldn't call it cheating, and I'd have to say my favorite in this genre, my favorite in
Yeah,
that genre, or whatever. It's just very very difficult because there are so many great ones.
it's easier to do it that way when you're separating them by different subgenres or categories. Uh, but because it's very difficult for me, like, to actually just kind of compile all those together and try to put, this film here, that film there. But still, like, when I think about it, this film is probably like at the top of that list, though. It's number
Yeah,
one. Like I said, it's the greatest Christmas film of all time for me.
yeah.
And
If you're
that's
talking about overall like Christmas films, it's got to be at the top of
that's very tough, but it's just because, and it's not, um, because of like, as the older the film is, the better it is. Because that's not the case for a lot of films. Because there's a lot of films that are like more modern that could be better than some films that were released during this time.
that.
Um, but it's just that the film itself is near flawless. I feel like it is just it's one of the most well-made films of all time, not just in Christmas films, like I mentioned earlier, but just of any film. It's like, the story is very compelling, and it just, it keeps your attention. It was something, like I said, when I watched this a few years ago for the first time all the way through, there was nothing in the film that bored me, or like it's like, oh, I'm not really interested in this
Right,
part or whatever. But it's always like the story was consistent, and I'm like, that when you watch a film and the story compels you consistently all the way through, that you're watching an amazing film.
right. You're watching something special that doesn't come
Mhm.
along but once in every, I don't know, 20 or so
Generation.
years, or more. Uh, and I'm sorry, sometimes I have to get up and go, and because first Reggie wanted out and then he wanted back in. It's cold outside. I knew he wasn't going to want to stay out there for very long, was you, Reggie? I need to get a Santa hat for you, buddy. He's a little camera shy. Sometimes he'll come up here and say hello.
Another thing I want to like to say is that the the acting abilities of everyone during this time was, it was
Hold on,
almost like
Chris. I'm
it was
going to have
almost.
to step
Oh, I'm
away.
sorry.
You go ahead, but I'm going to have to deal with these dogs a
Oh,
minute.
you're fine. You're fine. But what I wanted to say was is that it's they're clearly acting. That's their job for these films. But back during this time, it's like everyone was so good at what they did when it came to acting. It was almost as if it was just how they typically would act in real life. You watch a lot of films, especially more modern ones, where you have one or two, maybe a few more than that, actors in the film that do a really good job, and you say, "Oh, that's a great actor, that's a great actress. Um, and then you have like kind of other people within the film that's kind of not that great, kind of half-assed in what they do. But during this time, this era of filmmaking, it's like a lot of these actors that were on screen, even if you look at the background actors, it's just it feels very different. It was a very special time for film and in Hollywood, because these people were just putting, they were acting, but it just felt real. Everything felt natural. Uh, and the chemistry was always, off the charts between all of the different characters within the films. And I think that's why this era of Hollywood is probably one of my favorites, especially when it comes to horror. I love Universal Monsters. I feel like those are some of the greatest films ever made, as a if you're a horror fan. And I have met people in the past that have said that they don't really care for that era of horror, but for me, that's always going to be like one of my top interests of anything in this world is Universal Monsters and just this whole era of Hollywood in general.
But just so we get a little, in case people are coming in new and want to know where we're at, we are at the scene where George's brother Harry has come back home with his new wife in tow. And poor George is still thinking that because her father has passed away and he was asked to take over the building alone. And he thought that Harry was going to, come back from college and he was going to take over the building alone. And George was finally going to get to do all the things that he wanted to do. Well, that evidently is not the case.
Alex, you said you like the mean one. Is that like
Oh,
the takeoff of the Grinch that has David Howard Thornton that plays Art the Clown in that? I think
that's the only one I can think of
I
that.
think I recall seeing something about that film, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either. The Grinch, but violent, Alex says.
Oh, speaking of violent, I did watch another Christmas film the other night that I had never seen yet, but and it's funny because like a couple days after I'd watched it, it was announced or confirmed by the lead actor that they're going to be doing a sequel, and that's Violent Night with
Oh, that's
David
right.
Harbour, who plays Santa in that. And I really, really liked that one as well.
Now, I have not, I'll be honest, I haven't actually sat down and watched it scene for scene. But I'm thinking that Steve was watching it, so I saw parts of it. It looked interesting.
Oh, I loved it. I really loved the backstory of Santa in that, and
Mhm.
who he used to be before he was Santa, and it's really good. I thought it was like really because it's like it's action, it's comedy, it's got a lot of like violence in it for
Mhm.
sure, and and yeah, I really did like that one. Candace didn't get to watch it with me because she was already in bed by the time. And like I said, so I don't know if I mentioned this, but this whole past week was like my vacation time. So I was off of
That's
work this whole past week. And so like at the time I was watching that film that night, Candace was already in bed because she just started recently her new job. So she
right.
had to be at work the next morning pretty early. So, but I'm gonna try to get her to watch that one of these days with me because I really really did enjoy it.
Yeah, Candace is a busy little bee. I mean,
Oh yeah.
she
Well,
basically went from her
school.
college semester to right into getting this other
She
job.
did. Like as soon as her semester ended and all of her stuff, um, ended with this school semester, and I don't know if she told you or not, but she ended up getting straight A's for this semester. She
Yeah,
got
she
a
told me I was
4.0 GPA. I was like, wow, that's awesome. And
yeah.
then and immediately after that, like it was probably at least a day or two after she, ended the semester and she got her grades and everything. She got a call back pretty much from the job she had applied for and that she's working for now. And so, yeah, she's been very busy here lately. Not just like the stuff of school and now her new job, but she always is like running around like a chicken with its head cut off during Christmas time. Between like prepare decorating and preparing like food or wrapping gifts or
Oh
going
yeah.
shopping for the kids or whatever. Like I'm really proud of Candace, for what all she's been able to accomplish here lately and been able to maintain all of that, to be able to, and still live steadily. It's very, it's
And,
impressive.
and keep her sanity. I think I would
Yeah,
have just
yeah,
lost mine.
yeah. Especially when you live in this house with these crazy dogs that live here with us. I mean, it's hard to keep your sanity sometimes
And
with that much.
you guys have a new addition
We
to your
do.
family.
We do. We did get it, and we. So I thought I was joking around, Ken. And I said, because basically last Friday was the beginning of my vacation from work, and that was the same day that she brought in our new dog, Coda,
Mm.
and I was like, well. I said I was planning on trying to have a relaxed vacation next week, but I guess that's not going to happen now. Now we have 3 dogs in the house, but now Coda's been. I mean, he's just a puppy right now. He's just
Right.
like 5 or 6 months old. So I mean, it's going to take some work with him, but he's a very good dog. I
Hmm.
love him. He's a beautiful, beautiful dog, and very friendly with everyone. So, my parents actually came by the house today, and like Ghost is a big chicken. He will not go around my parents for some reason. But as soon as they came to the house today, and Coda was there, he ran right to him, was jumping all over my dad. Didn't really know what to think, but he
Hmm.
loved it. My dad loves dogs, so he really liked Coda a lot.
My dad loves dogs too, and I think it was last year after Christmas, Dad came and stayed with me and Steve all night, and all the dogs loved Dad. They were all, he slept on our couch, and almost all the dogs was there at one time or another on the couch with him. I don't know if he got any sleep at all. Hey, Blissful, it's good to see you in here. I hadn't seen you in here for a while. So I like this scene too because George is obviously absolutely head over heels in love with Mary,
Mm-hmm.
but he's trying to act like he's not. Now, a lot of guys know that sentiment, right? You're absolutely in love with the woman, but you don't want to let her know at first. You don't want to let her know how much in love you are with her. So, um, and Mary's obviously in love with George too.
And like I was saying earlier, like it's back during the time when this film came out, like it just to me the vibe just feels so much different. It feels special to
Mhm.
between the chemistry between the actors, and because it a lot of films, especially more modern ones, like you can you don't feel that chemistry between characters sometimes. I mean, you do. There are times that you will, but but a lot that you see, you feel like they're just there just to do a job, and
Mhm.
back like the chemistry here between Donna Reed and Jimmy Stewart, it feels real. It feels like that they're really in love with each other. That this is a real couple, but
Right.
of course it's not. But their chemistry was that good to make you feel that way. And I feel like that's why this movie is so beloved, is because it touches people that are real in real life that watch this, and feel like that's what that's what a relationship is truly like,
Right.
um, when you're in love with one another.
And
Uh,
especially when a relationship is starting to get real deep and serious.
yeah,
There was another line where she just told her mother, because her mother does not want her being with George Bailey. And she says, "He's making violent love to me, mother." I thought that was another, that's not a line that you would hear very often in movies from this time period, but it just works. So we see that Sam Wainwright is calling. And I think, I don't know about how Chris feels about this, but I think George is a little jealous, even though there's obviously nothing between Mary and Sam, except in her mother's eyes. Um, I think George is a little bit jealous of Sam. Looks like Sam's got his hands full where he's at anyway. Here's something I also like about the women in movies from this time period. They can look absolutely beautiful without it looking like overkill. It's a natural beauty.
hmm
And I mean, she's obviously got some amount of makeup on and stuff like that, but it's just not overkill. Her natural beauty comes through.
well, it's just so to me, it's so tough to kind of like look at it that way nowadays, because while she does have natural beauty there, and she's a very very beautiful woman, Donna Reed was, but if you look at it, like the quality of film, like as far as like cameras and everything that pick up on so much nowadays, especially like with 4K stuff, like
Mm-hmm.
it's they it's that's the only way I can like differentiate it from that, is because they didn't have that kind of quality of film back during this time.
Right.
So so what is the quality of like cameras and everything that are out now, you see stuff that picks up on flaws and stuff easily on people. So it's easy for people to say, well, they're not as beautiful as the actresses used to be in the 40s, 50s, or whenever during that time. Because, but would it? This is interesting to think about. Would you feel the same way if they did have those quality of cameras that we have today back then? Would they still look the same?
Right. That's a good question to bring up. And it would be nice to be able to, go back in time and be able, if somebody were to time travel, let's say, and be able to take the cameras we have now to that time period, that'd probably be the only way we'd be able to see that. But that is an interesting way to look at it.
But it also does have to do with like uh as generations have evolved and stuff, like and like lifestyles and cultures and stuff too, like with as you were talking about, like she does have makeup on there, but it's very very little where you can even tell.
Right.
But like that's another thing with women, especially in Hollywood, like makeup has evolved, on actresses and stuff for generations now. So, um, it's always good, I guess, to see the beauty in everything, no matter what it is.
So we're going to see yet again that poor George, with Mary in tow now, is not going to be able to get out of Bedford Falls. They can't even get out of Bedford Falls to go on their honeymoon. They're all set to go on their honeymoon, and they're planning on having this great adventure and this great romance, and something's going on over at the bank, unfortunately. And of course, Mary, being practical like most of us women would be, don't stop, George. Let's just go on. And he's got to go see what's going on. It looks like a Black Friday scene or something there where everybody was trying to get into the building alone. Chris, have you counted how many animals, how many pets Uncle Billy has in this place? Because he's got the crow and I think we see a squirrel at one point, and
I never really paid attention to that, honestly. I mean, I know that they just showed the crow there, but no, I've never really like paid much attention to that.
we found out old Mr. Potter's up to his old tricks again.
And I don't know why, but Uncle Billy always kind of reminded me of Elton John.
I never did think about that, but yeah, I can see that.
Like like Elton John now, not Elton, not like a young Elton John or anything, but
I like that saying underneath his father's picture. All that you can take with you is that which you can give away. Now, people in this generation may take a look at this when they're talking about money, and they may say, well, that's not a lot of money, or, why are they acting like that's, so much money? But you got to take into account the time period that this was in.
Makes
So
you
what?
wonder too if like something like this really did happen during that time.
Mhm.
Um, would it be as handled as well by the people in real life
Yeah,
if something like that happened? Because I just feel that people especially in today's world, like society is kind of really losing its grip on reality.
yeah.
Um, and like you look and it's something like I feel like, and as bad as it is to say, today if something like this would happen, there would probably be riots and stuff
Oh, definitely.
because people are just a lot of people are insane nowadays. So like, and they would probably be trying to burn the place down and everything. Because if you just, like, I just people are just losing it. I feel. I mean, I hate
And
to.
and I hate to say this because there are some people that are not like this, but there's so much selfishness and that goes on in today's world. And what this movie shows is that one man can make a difference. And the
Mhm.
reason why is because he's not selfish, he's selfless.
Yeah,
He cares more about those around him than he does himself.
I feel like it was just a very different time when this film came out, and you look if you look at like um, our grandparents growing up, they were more humble. They were more selfless people like that, and not all. I'm not saying that everybody was like that, but a large part of that generation was. But nowadays, just like with each generation that comes forth in this world, it's getting worse and worse. And I hate to say that, but it's the truth. I don't if you've ever seen the film Idiocracy, this world is becoming more and more like that film.
Mm-hmm. So now you saw one man that wanted all of his money,
Yeah.
but now you're getting people, and he kisses this lady because all she wants is 1750, and they did not close the building alone before 6, and they've still got $2 left. And George is soon going to realize, though, in all the hubbub, that Mary has disappeared. And he's not realizing, oh, Mrs. Bailey, that is my wife. And she's telling him to come home to 320 Sycamore, which is earlier where they were throwing the rocks at the window and making a wish.
I've hit an ad here, so because I know it did have this does have limited ads because I think it was on Prime Video, but So I'm gonna be about a minute and a half behind you.
Okay. So, just to keep everybody up to speed, George is headed to 320 Sycamore, and Bert and Ernie are trying to get this place set up like a hotel, so that George and Mary can have their honeymoon. They got a sign that says the bridal suite. This is truly encapsulates the idea that you make the best you can with what you've got. And we can see that there's rain coming through the roof, there's big holes in the roof. But where Mary is standing, it's dry. There's a warm fire going. She's got a meal set out for them to have. And George is kind of looking around at the leaky roof and stuff like that. But Mary has made the best she can with what they've got right now. And they're going to fix this house up. Or actually, Mary's going to do a lot of the fixing up of the house.
Can you give me a timestamp where you're at, Dana, so I can get
I am an hour and 2 minutes in. About 17 seconds. Hour 2 and 21 seconds.
All right, yeah, I'm right back up with you. They're showing a record player right now.
Yep.
Phonograph.
And the chickens or whatever that is turning on the fire.
Yep. All right, so I'm back. Pop back up with you. Give me 1 second. I hear the doorbell ring. I'll be right back.
Okay. And I will try to keep everybody entertained while Chris is away. So George is sharing a kiss with his new wife. Ooh, Blissful, you say it's -3. It's not that cold here, but it's colder than it has been. And you don't worry, Blissful, about replying to me. You just reply when you can. I understand. So now we're seeing that Martini, who is another man in town, George has helped Mr. Martini get his first home for him and his family. So they're not going to be renting anymore.
Well, Mr. Martini been busy if all them kids are his.
No, that's what I was thinking too.
I got a goat and everything getting in there with them.
Yeah, evidently Mr. Martini don't have any problems in the baby making department. And there's the return of Sam Wainwright.
So is that really like a loaf of bread that she just gave her?
I believe so. Yeah.
It's an odd looking loaf of bread. And you see the man standing there behind Mr. Potter. I always thought
Mhm.
he resembled Lon Chaney Sr.
He does. I did not think of that until just right now when you called my attention to it. So I'm assuming that this is Mr. Potter's kind of like his business partner or his
Mhm.
advisor who's telling him, if you let this keep going, uh, the Baileys are going to take over because nobody's going to be renting from Mr. Potter soon. They're going to go uh, to where all the homes that George Bailey is helping people get. It seems as Sam is living high on the hog. You can see that his wife's got all these rings and all this jewelry, but
Mhm.
we're going to find out that, and it's going to be quoted here towards the latter part of the film, that it doesn't it doesn't always take money to make a man rich. There's other ways that a man can be rich, and we're going to find out that as the movie progresses.
I always thought it was funny they did their little greeting. They would do the hee haw thing,
Yeah.
because that goes back to when they were little kids at the beginning of the movie. Their little whole gang of friends would do that. Um, I always just took that as like they were just a bunch of little jackasses because they were
Yeah,
doing
right.
because they were always just doing these like crazy things, like like sledding on shovels onto a frozen pond. I mean, that's it kind of explains why they were, with the whole hee haw thing. Like that's a jackass thing to do.
And this scene here where George is in Potter's office, don't you think he almost looks like a little kid the way the chair he's sitting in
Yeah, yeah.
compared with Mr.
It
Potter?
does.
Mr. Potter's up above him.
What is that little skull thing that's in front of George there? Like, what is that supposed to be? Like,
I don't know. I'm not sure what that is.
because it's got like a chain on it, and
Right.
almost kind of looks like a keychain, but I'm sure I'm sure it's something else. Like I've always wanted to know what is that.
It's not some kind of lighter or something for the cigars, is it?
That or it could be like one of those things where like where it opens up and they like dip like their quill in it for like a pen
Hmm.
or something. Maybe it has like ink in it. I don't know.
Blissful says this movie was actually supposed to be a Halloween movie, and I think I heard that at
How's
one
how's
time.
that? I mean, how was it?
I
So
I don't know specifics. Maybe Blissful knows more of the specifics. Blissful, if you know more about that, please share.
yeah, which it's seen as a Christmas movie, but like there's not a whole lot of like stuff surrounding the Christmas holiday in it until like
Right.
parts here and there, especially towards the end of the film. And I think that's why people, relate it so much to Christmas films. But majority of the film is not anything Christmas related.
Right, exactly.
But the overall message and the big part at the end is what really kind of like categorizes it as a Christmas film.
Mm. Blissful says because of his never being born. So I don't know if that maybe was tying in with
Hmm.
kind of the darkness surrounding Halloween sometimes, or something to that effect. So again, Potter's offering, if George comes over to the dark side and works for him, he'll give him $20,000 his first year. Now, people now would look at that $20,000. You can't live. That ain't no living wage. But again, think back to the time period that this was in.
Who is it that's playing Henry Potter here? What do you know the actor's name?
I think that might be Lionel Barrymore that's
So
playing.
is this the one that you said it was possibly Drew Barrymore's grandfather?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. He looks similar to the guy that played the wizard in The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. So at this point, George is thinking that he might actually, after he thinks it over for 24 hours, he's thinking about joining forces with Potter.
Mhm.
But then when he goes to shake Potter's hand, he realizes, oh my God,
He's like, I'm selling
what
out.
am I about to do here?
And like he wipes his hand on his jacket because he feels like, oh Lord, I've just done something very slimy.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of Christmas movies that have scenes from this movie in it, Home Alone also has a scene, and it's this scene here where he says, "No, no, only it's in French because the family's in
Oh yeah,
France
yeah,
at the
you're
time."
right. We just watched Home Alone last night, so yeah, that's very true. I almost forgot about that. This movie is also just very I know we mentioned that before, but it's very, very relatable to
Mhm.
people um, who are struggling to
Yes,
make a living and to just be a success. And and you have to go through trials and tribulations in life to get where you want to be. And when it eventually pays off, it's a really good feeling.
yes, it is.
And so like I've been through that. Me and Candace both have been through that. And it's all about being patient, you know,
Yeah, and
and just
everybody has setbacks too, and we
yeah.
see George have a little. He takes he takes a step forward, and then he has to take a couple of steps back, and then he takes
Hmm.
another step forward, and then something else will happen. But the thing to remember is those are all building blocks.
Yeah.
When in
It,
essence you're not taking steps back, you're just kind of on pause. That's what I think. You're on pause for a little bit, just like pausing a movie in the middle of it. Blissful watched The Bishop's Wife today, and she says she loves that movie. I think I've seen The Bishop's Wife, but that's been a long time since I've seen that.
I've never seen that film. I don't think I've ever heard of that film.
Mm. And we're saying now that, you know, George never left Bedford Falls. Him and Mary started a family. Mary's fixing the house up.
And that's another thing, like the very human aspect that's relatable is that it's easy to doubt yourself if it's easy to be discouraged. when things aren't going the way you planned them to be. Um, but I feel like the ultimate message of this film is that um, there's always a reasoning for everything.
Mhm.
Because and if you stay true to the path and you're patient, um, and you try to remain positive, it's eventually there things are gonna good things are gonna happen for you.
Right. And if we look at this movie in particular from the aspect of course, there probably wouldn't have been a movie, but let's say George did get out of Bedford Falls. Let's
Hmm.
say George did go to college. Would things have turned out the same with him and Mary if he ever came back home, or would he just keep going on a completely different path? I think
I
he would
don't.
have been on a different path.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think, like said, like that's why everything happens for a reason. Even if it comes off as something bad, or something that you don't agree with or has discouraged you. Um, but it happens that way for a reason, and um, anything that would be different from that would, possibly just, change you drastically.
Right.
Um, if he had win, and he may have become, what the thing that he hated the most, which he could have ended up becoming just like Mr. Potter.
Yeah. And I think that he very well could have went down that path and become, like he mentions, Mr. Potter being a bitter, frustrated old man.
And
Uh,
the town, I was going back to what TJ said earlier about like this being there being an homage to this in Gremlins. I can kind of see that now with the name of the town, because the name of the town in this film was Bedford Falls,
mhm.
whereas the town in Gremlins is Kingston Falls.
Yes.
So I can definitely see that tribute to this film that as well. And something I found out recently is that the town in Gremlins is the exact same town that they used for Hill Valley in Back to the Future.
Right. Yeah. I think that's probably why sometimes when we watch certain movies, it's like coming back home. You've heard people say it was like coming home when I watched this movie because we've seen some of the same surroundings. They may have been laid out different,
Hmm.
but it's like, let's say you went away for a couple of years and then came back to your parents' home. It's kind of like that. If you watched a movie that took place in a certain area and then 2, 3 years down the road, another movie was made in that same area,
Hmm.
it would feel like coming home to you. It would feel
Right.
comfortable. So we're gonna say this is the big clincher of the movie. Uncle Billy becomes so distracted by kind of showing off for Mr. Potter that he accidentally leaves the newspaper with the $8,000 he was supposed to deposit in this newspaper and hands it to Mr. Potter. And Mr. Potter, not being a nice man, is not going to say, "Hey, Billy, you left this money in here." And this would be a big deal to lose $8,000.
So if I lost $8,000, I'd probably lose my mind.
Yeah, even in this day and age, if I
Yeah,
lost 8,000.
especially this day and age, yeah. Because you got to think about how much money $8,000 was back
Mhm.
then. That's probably like around like $1 million nowadays
Right.
if you compare it to that. Because, but to me, like I've never had $8,000 in my life. I've never seen $8,000.
My
Uh,
dad probably has, but I have not.
I mean, maybe over time, but like at one time, I've never seen that amount of
Right.
money to where I was able to use that on something. So, um, you know, it's just the economy's hard nowadays, so
Yeah.
it's hard for anybody to see that kind of money if they're the average Joe like me.
Yeah, us average Janes and Joes, we don't see that kind of money all at once.
Yeah. Especially if you live in the state of Kentucky.
Right. So we find out here that Violet is going to leave town, and George is not only lending her money, he's giving her some of his own money as well. Of course, you know how that looks for George to come out of his
Yeah.
office with the door shut with lipstick on his side of his face. So Uncle Billy is apparently distressed at the moment. So as I said, this is an over 2 hour movie, but we're already at the last quarter, or what I would call the last quarter of the movie. That's how a good, well paced movie works. So now at this point, George is getting frantic. This is probably as violent as George ever gets in this movie.
Yeah.
There's even a dog in there now, and there's the squirrel.
And it's tough to watch this stuff too, because he starts getting kind of hasty with his family and all that, and is very impatient, and just because he's basically, he's got all this stress on him behind his business and losing that money, and he just feels like he's becoming a failure, and it's like I said, it's easy to feel that way sometimes.
And I think he feels like at this point he's going to lose everything. It's just like he was telling Uncle Billy, it's going to mean prison, and we're going to lose everything if we don't find that money.
Harry can tell she knows that something's
Mhm.
wrong.
Something's up.
She know. I mean, just look at the bags under George's eyes. I mean, he's definitely becoming a just a different person at this point. You know.
You have to wonder at this time period when weren't there weren't as many advances in like special effects and makeup
Right.
and stuff like that. I'm wondering. I just have to wonder, did Jimmy Stewart go days without sleep or something to make his eyes look that way?
Well, I mean,
Now you can do tricks to do that, like Robert England talked about
mhm,
when he went to try out for the role of Freddy Krueger, which he ended up getting. He made his eyes look gaunt by taking cigarette ashes out of the ashtray of his vehicle and rubbing them underneath his eyes. So there are, there are tricks that you can do.
I don't know if you've noticed it, but I've noticed this since the first time I watched this all the way through. Is that there's several times throughout the film, as you can see, there's like little like cuts where it's kind of like where they splice the film
Yeah,
together, like
yeah,
in
slight,
editing,
yeah.
and it doesn't flow as natural as it should.
Hmm. There was one just in the last scene or two
Yeah,
that I
yeah.
noticed.
There's not very many, but there's maybe about three or four splices within the whole film, but it's pretty noticeable if you pay attention.
And it's almost like a pause in the film, but not quite. It's not as obvious as when the angels paused
Yeah,
George when he was standing like this.
it's just basically where they have shot that same scene several times, and they've just kind of the spliced, the cuts together.
Hmm. So Zuzu is sick with a cold because she didn't want to crush her flower that she won. And those flower petals are going to come into play a couple more times that George just slipped into his pocket. And I'll tell you, nothing, I don't even have human kids myself, but I bet Chris and Candace both could tell me this. Nothing hurts more than having your child be sick and you feel like you can't do a whole lot for them.
Yeah. Um, I can tell you, well, not really him being sick, but like I could tell you one time when Noah was, I think he was just 2 years old at the time. Maybe not even two. He might have even been not even been two yet. Um, but he was getting up out of the bathtub from taking a bath, and he fell face first on the side of the bath, and it busted his teeth, and it
Oh,
not so he had to have surgery on his mouth to fix his teeth. And he, like I said, he was just like 2 years old, maybe a little, not even two yet. So when they did the surgery, they had to put him to sleep, and it was very, very terrifying for me and Candace and our family, and
mm,
because when stuff like that happens, it's just a human trait to have bad expectations and think the worst things in those situations. But I can't tell you how happy I was when they brought him out
Mm.
there to us out of surgery and seeing that he was okay. Um, but it's awful. It's an awful thing to have to go through as a parent. You
Mm.
know, see your kid hurting or in a situation like that.
I know. I don't really remember it, but my mom said that when my brother was just a tiny, tiny baby, he hadn't been out of the womb very long, that he had to have a hernia surgery. And that hurt mom so bad. She cried because they had to give him a shot to, put him out so that they could do what they needed to do. And he just cried and cried whenever they gave him the shot. And yeah, it's heartbreaking. Candace says we went to Huddle House afterward and seeing him laughing and eating was the best thing I could have seen at that point.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I would imagine.
remember that, and it was because I'm pretty sure my parents were with us when we went to because they were there with us when they had to put him under for surgery, and yeah, it's I tell you, that was a bad situation we got put in, but it's just I really miss Noah uh being that age and
Yeah,
some of the times that we had, when he was that little, and it's tough as a parent because he'll be 12 years old next month. So yeah,
I can't even. I
it's
can't
tough
even
watching him grow up.
imagine. You know what? And that never leaves you because I know my mom says, and I'm sure y'all, your parents and Candace's parents and her mom and stuff have said these things before. My mom will still yet say, "I wish you and your brother were little again, and I
Yeah.
could have you home and keep an eye on you." And
I
you
think about it all too much, Dana. I mean, maybe I shouldn't, but I think about it all too much. It's not, you don't fully grasp it until you become a parent yourself, and because I never thought about that stuff when I was a kid. When I was growing, I was wanting to. There was times where I wanted to grow up, and I was thinking about, hey, I'm gonna have a life of my own. I'm gonna have a house of my own, family of my own, all that stuff. And you don't think about what your parents are thinking. You know what I mean? And you
right,
don't think about what they want because if there's the selfish part of me wants Noah to be with me and Candace forever, and I
right.
always and we just because we're like a team. It's just the three of us, and sorry, I don't mean to get emotional, but
No, I mean, but a movie like this is going to make us all emotional, I think, at some points. You know, I've had the reverse of the parent thing lately where I'm not really sad. I'm not really depressed. It's a longing feeling like today, this afternoon, I opened the back door and I could smell wood smoke.
mhm,
And when I smelt that wood smoke, I automatically flashed back to going to my grand and papa's house at Christmas time. On Christmas Eve, we would always go to my grand and papa's house that Christmas Eve night. That was my dad's parents. And so when that smell of wood smoke, I just got a whiff of it. It just automatically sent me back to that time period. And I didn't cry or anything. It was just a longing, wanting to reach back and have that
yeah,
moment again.
yeah, but yeah, like I said though, but that's that selfish part of me wants that, but also at the same time, I want him to experience life on his own and
Mhm.
and get out there and make something of himself. You know what I mean?
And I know that Noah will, because that's the one, that is one smart child, and he's
Yeah,
been raised right.
you ain't.
Like this.
You're not kidding.
Every time I see him, he just astounds me
This
with.
kid, let me tell you, Dana, and not to get off subject from the movie or anything, but he was telling me the other day, and it was like I can't even remember the name, but he was telling me about like this thing. It was like in Greece from like I can't remember what time the time frame was, but he was telling me like how I think his name was like Cephalus or something like it was a I can't even pronounce. He would be able to tell you more than what I could, but like about how this guy he would just roll this rock up this hill, and he would fail time after time after time, and no matter how many times he failed, he would keep going and trying to get that to succeed. So it was basically like an analogy of that. No matter how many times you fail, just to not give up because you'll eventually succeed. And he learned this from the stuff that he watches, like on YouTube and stuff. And it's really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even know about that. That's what I mean. The kid just astounds me every time I hear something that he said. Candace says, "What I'd give to have one day with my grandparents again. Christmas time always brings me back to those days." And she says, also, Henley says hi. Well, tell Henley I said hi as well, Candace. I love that. I love Noah, and I love Raiden too, but I've gotten to know Henley uh, a lot more because me and Candace, for instance, had Henley on Friday Foolish not very long ago, and he had a little taste test with us.
He loves that. Like he loves uh, anything dealing with like YouTube. Henley does, and uh, he was he was here at the house the other night, and he had like this bottle of Sprite, and it had maybe like about that much left in the bottle, and he was like, "Hey, Uncle Chris, let me show you this thing that I saw on YouTube." And he's like doing like the bottle flip thing where it has to like you flip
Oh,
it and it would land on its bottom. Um, and so he just kept doing, and so I just started recording him doing that just because I was just going to record it to show Candace, and and I and he said, "Are you recording me?" Oh, and here he is right now.
there
Hey,
he
what's
is.
going
Yeah.
on?
Hi,
Hey,
Dana.
Henley.
I just wanted to say I love you and Merry Christmas.
Well, I love you too, sweetheart, and Merry Christmas to you too.
Thank
Good
you.
boy. Take Ghost back in there with you, okay? Go on, Ghost. Go Finley.
That's a sweet kid there. Noah's a sweet kid,
Mhm.
and like I said, through Candace and Chris, I've gotten to know Henley more and more all the time, and he's just there's an innocence that's with those two children that I don't know. I wish I could capture it in a bottle and keep it forever. That innocence,
Yeah.
it's just something special. So we see that to get back to the movie a little bit, we saw that George was just completely at the end of his rope,
Mhm.
and he was thinking of jumping off that bridge. And who should come along but Clarence? And there's Clarence there, the angel that needs to get his wings, and he's been sent down to help George. So good old Clarence jumped in that icy water, and George, being the man that he is, saved Clarence.
So it's law where I come from too.
Right. And he asks him where he comes from. He's like, heaven. Sounds like Chris and Candace's dogs are having a little party. They sound like mine.
Oh, that's not our dogs. If you hear
Oh,
them,
it's not.
yeah, that's our neighbor's
That's
dogs.
the neighbor's dog. Okay, the neighbor's dogs are having a party.
Well, they're definitely having something. Those dogs don't quit hardly. I mean, it's all like hours of the night. These dogs.
Golly, how do y'all get any sleep?
Well, luckily they're so. See, I'm in Noah's room right now. This is where we do pretty much all the YouTube stuff on StreamYard and all that here from Noah's room because it's really it's on the other opposite side of the house from like where our bedroom is and just everything else. So when we're on the other side of the house, we don't really hear them. But when you're here in Noah's room, because the window is right here, and like the literally right outside that window is the fence, and then their yard, and those dogs are always out in the yard, and especially the German Shepherd, he don't shut up at all. Um,
German Shepherds can be noisy dogs, I'll tell you. We've had some in our neighborhood.
but we've learned to cope with it. It's just a part of everyday living here at the Prater household.
So George is saying, there's only one way you can help me, Clarence. You got $8,000 on you. So, we do need money here on earth. It's just a fact of life. But what Clarence says about where I come from, you don't have to worry about money. You don't need money. Um, if there's one of those, there's a lot of takeaways you can take from this movie. But I think one of the takeaways I can take from that statement that Clarence makes is, yeah, we need money to live, but do we actually need as much as we think we do? Because, and me and Candace have had these conversations, and sometimes when we're at our lowest point, and George is pretty much at his lowest point here in the movie, and we think, you know, dear Lord, how am I going to get out of this? I can't pay my bills. I'm hungry and I need something to eat, or, I need to take care of my kids or my spouse or whatever. Something always happens and you're provided for. And like I said, I don't think Candace would mind me sharing this. She's told me many, many times, she said, the Lord has blessed us again.
Yeah.
And if I think back on it, the Lord has blessed me many, many times too. And I'm not trying to get religious or self-righteous or beat somebody over the head with religion. I'm just saying, if you think back in your life to certain what we would think is low points, we're still here, right? We're still surviving. So George has gotten his wish here to get back to the moon. George says that he wished he'd never been born. Everybody would be better off if he'd never been born. And Clarence has provided that for him. Candace says, I've always loved and appreciated this film, but as my personal faith has gotten stronger, this film has become even more to me. Its meaning has grown into something much more beautiful for me.
Yep.
And I think that's happened for me as well. George is looking for his car that he hit this guy's tree with his car earlier, but his car's not there. The tree's not damaged. And they're finding out, it's Pottersville, it's not Bedford Falls. I love the character of Clarence. Clarence is really like a child. He's a complete innocent.
Clarence reminds me of this actor, and I can't think of the guy's name, but I know you know who he is, Dana. Um, do you know the guy at the beginning of House of a Thousand Corpses? Um, and he's like a little short guy, and he says, "Hey, I know you." He's like, "You little Dick Wick," or something like that, or so, I can't remember what he says, but like
Oh, you're talking about
his name's Michael something, I think.
Michael J. Pollard. That's who
Yes,
you're
because
thinking about.
he's in tons of stuff. He's in
Yeah,
the Bill Murray film Scrooged, and just
yeah,
he was in like episodes of the Andy Griffith Show, and just a lot of stuff. So I always thought that Michael Pollard, that Clarence kind of resembles him a bit. Just maybe
yeah,
not completely, but like just the way he's like his facial expressions are
yeah.
kind of resemble Michael Pollard.
Michael Pollard was in some other horror movies, but besides House of a Thousand Corpses, he was in a film called American Gothic.
Yeah.
He was in Sleepaway Camp 3.
Yeah, that's
or
right. I forgot
Sleepaway
about
Camp.
that.
Was
It's
it?
one.
Yeah,
It's either
Sleepaway.
2 or 3. I
Yeah,
thought it
it's
was.
3. I had to stop or am I confused? Yeah, it's 3. It's 3. I'm just like get
Because
myself
he
totally.
plays like the pervert in it.
Yeah, he does. But boy, I bet Michael Pollard was enjoying that though, because he got the before his character was dispatched, he got to enjoy a little scenic beauty, I guess you could call it. I'm trying to be nice here. You just
Right.
have to watch the movie to fully see that. Yeah, because on part 2, that was Uncle John, who was played by Walter Gotell, who was, I think, in a James Bond movie, one of the James Bond movies.
I don't know of any instances where they remade this film, but do you know of any times that they ever remade It's a Wonderful Life?
The only thing that would be even close, and I don't think it's really close, is that It's a Wonderful Knife movie that they made, which is
Oh. No, I just mean like a complete like
remake.
remake
I
of the
don't think
same
so.
story and everything.
Yeah, I don't
Uh,
think so.
and that's odd too. That kind of speaks volumes in a way, because as world renowned as this film is and how many people love it, they do that with so many other films that are well loved. They'll take and they'll remake the film, make a modernized version or something, and
Mhm.
it feels like this is such a perfect film that there's no need to remake it.
Blissful says they did make a movie called Clarence back in the 80s or 90s, but
Okay.
I did not know about that. That's
But nothing like with the same title or anything, right? It's a Wonderful Life.
Candace, I love that line too, and I think Chris does too. You want the moon? Just say the word, and I'll throw a lasso around it, pull it down. She says that's one of her favorite quotes. So, guys and gals, I hate to, and I hate to do this to Chris again, but I'm going to have to make a run to the restroom. So, I'm going to take myself out of this stream just temporarily. I'll be right back.
Has anybody ever thought about stuff like that, to where like if you were never born, how different the world would be? Because I think it goes to show in this film, like it shows what an impact that George had made in his community, to for so many changes to have happened now in the world, because he was never born. Like, you truly never know, like what could happen. Like, if you think about those kind of things, how different would the world be had you had not made an impact on someone around you? You know what I mean? It's very odd to think about, but yeah. What's up?
I'm leaving.
Are you leaving?
Yeah, I'm
All
going to
right,
my
you
dad's house.
love you, buddy.
Okay.
And here you see like everything's like midnight club dancing, bamboo room cocktails. You're like pawn shops, and there's like a girls burlesque. So um, Mr. Potter has just taken over this whole town, and has turned it into basically like a whole town of sin, or something. It's almost like Las Vegas or something. Hmm.
Okay, back again. Let's hope that I don't have to leave during the last part of this movie.
I was just saying, as when you were gone, Dana, it's like, like, because there we're still in the segment with George as if he were never born. Um, so what are your thoughts on, if like, have you ever had thoughts about what the world would be like if you were never born, if you had never made an impact on anybody around you or within your community?
Mhm.
Would how different would the world be?
I had thought about that. Probably more times than I could count at different points in my life. I have thought about that. What if I hadn't been born? What if there was never a me around? And depending on, not trying to bring everybody down, but depending on my state of mind at that point. sometimes I may think, well, people probably would have been better off. And then other times I think, no, they really wouldn't have been better off without me
But
because
see,
everybody
it,
has a place in this world.
it's easy to feel that way too, because when you get so discouraged in life, you feel that. But I think that's why you know movies for me is like an outlet, and it's kind of like it it kind of is like an extension on reality a little bit in some ways on for some films, and this one especially because it shows that sometimes you can have an impact on the people around you, and it can affect on how things exist in the world. So with George, like he never was born, so Mr. Potter had nobody to compete against really.
Right.
Uh, and he took over the town and basically turned the town into like a miniature version of Las Vegas.
Yeah, he did.
And and yeah, so yeah, it just kind of goes to show that sometimes, things that you do in this world do matter.
This scene between George and his mother, which in this reality, it's not his mother, is so, in a lot of ways, it's more heartbreaking than any of the other scenes because
Mm.
he's begging her, he's saying, Mother, don't you know me? I'm your son. And, she's like, I don't know you. Candace is asking, what is your favorite Christmas TV special? Oh man, that's hard because I've been like, does that include cartoons specials, Candace?
Yeah, I think you can. I would include those.
Because I
Um,
just went back and I watched both the Garfield Christmas special from like 1987, and I also watched the Claymation Christmas. And so those are really sticking out of my mind, but it's hard for me to pick a favorite.
well, if you count like if we're looking at just like TV specials, if you look at the Rankin Bass, like Santa Claus is coming to town, stuff like that, as TV specials, um, I would probably say The Year Without a Santa Claus would probably be my favorite. But I almost look at those as like movies, though, like instead of just
Yeah.
TV specials. Like, like when I think of Christmas TV specials, like live action stuff.
Mhm.
The one that stands out the most in my mind is the Pee Wee's Playhouse Christmas special,
Yeah.
which he had like several different like celebrities that guest starred, like Grace Jones was on there,
Mhm.
and I think maybe Little Richard was in the Pee Wee Christmas special. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I'd have to probably really sit and think about it. I'm not sure.
Candace says Please is one of her favorites. I know Candace and Chris both are big Pee Wee Herman
Oh yeah.
fans.
But have you ever seen The Year Without a Santa Claus, Dana?
It seems like I have, Chris, but that one's been years for me.
It's the one with the Miser brothers, the Heat Miser and Snow Miser. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. I'm
and
definitely recalling it, but it's just been so long.
it kind of revolves around this town called Summertown, where it's always summer. It never snows or anything there. And I love it. I love that stuff. I love all the Rankin Bass films. Not just the Christmas one, but like like Mad Monster Party. They did
Yeah.
that one too. I love all that stuff.
Do you remember? I don't know if this was a made for TV movie or what. It was back in the 80s. and I thought it was called the Night They Saved Christmas, but it was live action, and people the mother and the kids said that they went to the North Pole and they talked to Santa, and everybody around them thought that somebody had drugged their cocoa or something like that and made them think that they went to the North Pole. Do you remember that one?
And it was live action.
Yeah. I wanted to say that like Jacqueline Smith was in it.
And what did you say it was called?
I thought it was called The Night They Saved Christmas.
The Night They Saved Christmas. Let me see if I can look it up.
And I may be slightly wrong on the title.
Yeah, it looks like it says it's a 1984 film. Let's see who's in this. Art Carney, Jacqueline Smith, Paula Matt, Scott Grimes,
Mm-hmm.
Paul Williams is in it. I don't. It doesn't look familiar to me.
And I
But
hadn't seen it in a long time, but I remember it when I was a kid. Evidently, you can watch it on Tubi for free, folks.
yeah,
So.
June Lockhart's in it as Mrs. Claus. Art Carney as Santa Claus. Huh. Yeah, I'm gonna definitely look into that one. I don't think I've ever seen that one.
Blissful says Peanuts, Christmas, and Rudolph. I watched Rudolph again recently. I watched Rudolph and I watched Frosty. Oh, and I watched Mickey's Christmas Carol. Anybody remember the Disney Christmas special growing up? And they had all the little mini cartoons like Mickey and Pluto's Christmas, and
Oh
Chip and
yeah.
Dale were in their tree, and Donald and his nephews. And then it culminated in Mickey's Christmas Carol. Was the finale of that
This
one.
is
I
the
love that.
scene where George is running through town saying
Yeah,
Merry.
Merry Christmas.
That's one of I think the most famous clips when it comes to this movie. And because he's realizing he's getting a second chance here, and which looking back on what I mentioned earlier about this film, like that TJ brought up about how um, this kind of inspired stuff in Gremlins, and I, looking at it like maybe this film in itself was inspired by A Christmas Carol, because if you look
Right.
at the whole story of Scrooge, how he went through one night of seeing all that he'd done from the Ghost of Christmas past, present, and future. And then at the end of A Christmas Carol, Scrooge is given that second chance and he turns over a new leaf. That's basically the same thing. That's what's going on here with George. Is that he was so like living in negativity of what was going on, and he didn't look at the things that he should appreciate around him in his life. He was just more worried about money and all that stuff. That was not as important as what his family life and everything is. It was much like with Scrooge, how he just was just this obnoxious, rich, asshole, pretty much.
More
Uh,
like Mr. Potter is in this.
yeah. So I feel like there's a lot of inspiration here from A Christmas Carol. Um,
And I think George is learning to embrace the imperfections in himself, the imperfections in the house, because the newel post it was still loose. That part of it was still coming off. Does anybody remember the parody, or they said it was the lost ending to It's a Wonderful Life on Saturday Night Live, one of the Saturday Night Live Christmas shows?
No,
And
how
it had Dana Carvey playing George Bailey.
oh, so was this like late 80s, early 90s Saturday Night Live?
I would say it probably would have had to have been. Because I have a compilation DVD that's Saturday Night Live
Mhm.
Christmas Past, and they show different
Oh.
clips. I love that. I love to
I
bring.
love Saturday Night Live, and, while I do know some of the older skits from the show, I'm not as well versed in those eras as I am, because I started watching Saturday Night Live in the 90s.
Right.
Um, and it was right around the time when Will Ferrell first came on Saturday Night Live is when I began watching it.
Mhm.
Um, but around that time it was getting popular because of Will Ferrell and other people on the show. So they were like issuing all of these like best of like VHS tapes, like
Right.
best of Chris Farley, best of Dana Carr, best of Mike Myers, best of Eddie Murphy, Chevy Chase, stuff like that. So that's watching those tapes and stuff that they made was what really kind of like, because I knew like a lot of those actors already from like just their movies and stuff,
Mhm.
but like I didn't know as much about them from their time when they were on Saturday Night Live. Because I was a big Wayne's World fan, and like I didn't realize until I had seen that Wayne's World was a skit from Saturday Night Live before it was a movie.
Right. So that skit from Saturday Night Live actually covers what happened kind of after this scene.
Uh-huh.
And in it, they all run, and
Oh, yeah.
George and Mary and Harry and Uncle Billy and all of them, plus some of the townspeople go, and John Lovitz plays Mr. Potter, and they start tossing Mr. Potter around and kicking him and doing wrestling moves on him and all kind of stuff. It's just hilarious.
I can imagine.
Blissful says she remembers that skit. Yeah, it's pretty funny. So Harry says, a toast to my brother George, the richest man in town. And there is the Tom Sawyer book. Remember, no man is a failure who has friends. Thanks for the wings, love Clarence. I love that quote too. That written quote there. That's a thing I think that we all have to remember because everybody has friends. We may feel like sometimes that we're just the loneliest person on earth and we don't have any friends, but we do. We do. Even at my lowest points, I know that I've got at least one or two friends that I can count on. So we have I hope everybody's around the same spot. We have officially reached the end of It's Wonderful Life. We had the bell ringing again. And as they say in the movie, every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings. So remember that next time you hear a bell ringing. So I hope everybody has enjoyed watching It's a Wonderful Life with me and Chris and everybody in the chat. We had a pretty active chat tonight, I think.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I think it was A lot
And
of
now we've got 7 people in here. It's always like sometimes I think maybe I'm doing these watch alongs too early. Maybe I need to do them a little bit later. If somebody can give me some insight into that, I know I ask this periodically, but if anybody can give me any insight into what a better time would be for the majority of you guys and gals,
well,
I'd
I
be
mean, you don't want to do them too late.
no, I mean, I know that some people do them 9, 10 o'clock, but especially on a Sunday night when some of us might be off tomorrow, but I for
Mhm.
one am not off
Me
tomorrow.
neither.
Um, I'm off Tuesday and Wednesday, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Um, oh, thank you, Burley. Burley gave a $1.99 super chat. Burley says this is the greatest Christmas movie ever. I think
I
you share
agree. I agree.
sentiment with the majority of us, Burley.
But yeah, unfortunately, I do have to. My vacation has ended. This is my last day of
Right.
my Christmas vacation, I guess you could call it. Um, so I have to go back to work in the morning, and I do have to work on Christmas Eve as well. But I'm hoping
Oh,
they may
wow.
let us out early because there's a lot of stuff going on that night for my family, and then my not just my family with Candace, Noah, and everybody, but also like my mom and my brother and all that stuff. We're supposed to be do something. We're doing something on Christmas Eve too over at her house. Um, so I don't. I'm hoping they let me off early on Christmas Eve. That way we can, because I think Mom is starting everything at like around like 6 o'clock that evening. And typically my shift doesn't end until 7:15. So, but typically every year at my job, they'll release what's called VTO, voluntary time off,
Right.
if not a lot of calls are coming through.
Mhm.
So if the call queue stays low, they'll put that send an email out for everybody and say, hey, if you want to take VTO, if your shift ends at this time. So the way that works is that they don't do that for like everybody. Like
Mhm.
that they'll like first release the email that says like 4:30 end of shift, which means if you get off at like 4:30, you're eligible for VTO. But the
Oh,
later your shift is, the more you may not be able to get VTO. So where my shift ends at 7:15, that's what scares me, is that I may
yeah.
have to work my entire shift on Christmas Eve. But we shall see, I guess.
Blissful says, have a wonderful Christmas and may it be filled with happy memories. Thank you, Blissful. We hope that for you
Same
as
for you.
well. And speaking of having to work and things like that, since Chris brought that up, it reminded me again. And I did mention this to Candace, but it probably warrants mention to everybody. People that watch me and Candace do a Friday Foolish, usually every Friday. Unfortunately, this week, the Friday after Christmas, guess who's got to work the late Friday shift? This gal does.
Oh no.
So I will unfortunately have to work from 1 until 7 in the evening. And it's probably going to be the boringest few hours of my life. Not that I want to be overrun with calls, but I really think it's unneeded, like after a holiday, to have somebody work that late shift. But I don't make the rules, and they made me work 4 hours. I had to waste 4 hours of my life this past Saturday for one phone call, and basically one phone call, and it wasn't that huge of an emergency either. And then I got to turn right around and this coming Friday work a late Friday. I'm like, this sucks.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry, Dana. That
Well,
sucks.
it is what it is, but so more than likely, me and Candace will not be doing a Friday Foolish on Friday. I'll talk to Candace and see if we could maybe work something out for over the weekend, or if we want to push it to the following Friday. I'll just see what works for me and
Well,
what.
what? Let me ask you. Let me propose an idea for you though, Dana. What time does your shift end on Friday?
It will end at 7 p.m. Eastern time.
Well, I mean, you guys could still do it. I mean,
We could, and I would be up for it if Candace was.
yeah, and you guys can talk about that amongst yourselves to see if it's both comfortable for you guys. But like, here's an idea, just like this. So this is based on what you were talking about earlier about like there's more people start coming as it gets later.
Mhm.
Maybe do like a special Friday Foolish after dark.
We could.
And like it could be like later in at night, maybe around like 9 o'clock or something, 9, 10 o'clock,
Mhm.
and you got it. But like I said, that's just an idea. I don't know if it'll work out for both. I'm not sure, if what Candace will be doing.
Right. Yeah.
You guys can discuss that, and maybe that might be something a little experiment you guys could do to see
Yeah. See
if
how
you
it
can get
works
more people joining the room like you were talking about as it gets later. So we'll
out.
definitely see, I guess.
That is one thing that I've been told by more than one person in the past is that more people, even through the week, and I don't know why that is, more people will get onto a stream the later it is at night.
Hmm.
And I have yet to figure out what it is about that.
I don't know. I think a lot of it has to do with like just maybe um, work shifts for certain people, or maybe just like they got stuff going on during the early hours of the evening,
Mhm.
and then they're around as it gets later, they're settling down. Maybe they're on their phones or whatever, and they're like just browsing through the internet on YouTube and places like that, and they're able, more people are joining around that time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really don't know how it works, but
But
it's worth a shot to find out, I guess.
yeah, to do, an experiment, and maybe if the experiment don't work out this time, maybe me and Candace could do it another time. But she and I will be in talks
Oh
about
yeah.
what we want to do, and me and Candace always talk just multiple times a day. Usually, Chris could probably tell you that he's
Well, I mean, I do know of you guys talking several times throughout the day and stuff, but there's sometimes when I'm not even around, like when I guess you guys are talking stuff, and then like and I'll ask her, I'll be like, "Hey, have you talked to Dana today?" She's like, "Oh yeah, I've talked to her several times," and she'll like show me like all the messages you guys have between one another, and I'm like, "Oh, well, I said I didn't even realize you talked to her today."
I know sometimes Candace will go out driving. She'll just be driving around and she'll be
Yeah,
talking.
she does that too. Like I'll be here at the house or whatever, and then like she'll go down to her mom's or something, or if she has to go down there and get Noah or something, and then she'll like go pick up Noah, and then she'll bring him back to the house, and she said, "I'm just gonna drive down the road for a minute, so I'm gonna talk to Dana a little bit." I was like, "Okay."
And so, whatever works for people. I mean, that's what works for me and Candace. It might not work for everybody that talks a lot to friends and or family members, but anyway, I guess normally I would stay on here till, all hours, but because me and Chris both do have to work tomorrow, it'd probably be a good idea to tie things up. And also, I gotta uh, make a Christmas gift. Oh, well, thank you for another $1.99 super chat, Burley. Burley says George Bailey is my life coach. I think George Bailey should be a lot of people's life coach.
Yeah.
Um, and Candace says, I think people wind down late at night and watch YouTube. And you're probably right on that, Candace. I would imagine you would be. That totally makes sense. Um, but I'm going to be making a Christmas gift for my aunt. She's wanting a T-shirt from me. She's wanting a Friday 13th T-shirt. So I'm going to
Oh,
be
cool.
pressing a shirt tonight with a Friday 13th design for her to take to her on Christmas. Um, but I got to do that and got to do a couple other things before I get settled down for the night. And
Hmm.
pray for me and Chris that our day is not just overly busy tomorrow. It
Yeah.
can be
Oh,
steady.
I'm sure it will be for me.
Well, I'll throw in an extra prayer for you, Chris, so that's not completely crazy.
I appreciate that.
But Chris, is there anything that you wanted to bring up before we tie everything up completely tonight?
Um, well, I just want, in case, I don't talk to anybody that was in chat, or for if I don't get to talk to you before then, I just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas.
Yes,
I hope everybody stays safe out there, and and just don't do anything too crazy this holiday. You know what
yes.
I mean?
Don't do anything too crazy, too strenuous, whatever. Don't go above your means or anything like that. So, um, but I would like to echo Chris's sentiment of wishing everybody a Merry Christmas, however you celebrate it. And hopefully you're able to spend it with family and friends or a pet, which can be a friend and a family member. There's no law that says they can't be. My pets, every single one of them, even the lizards and the snake, they're family. They're part of this family. Now Chris would, or not Chris. I'm got Chris on brain because Chris is on here with me. Steve would probably roll his eyes about that, but they are part of our family. So, but me and Chris are off like a couple of dirty shirts tonight. Now these shirts aren't dirty. This is actually one of my Joe Bob Christmas for the creepy Christmas show they had, and we're off like a couple of dirty shirts. And I want to remind everybody, as I always do before I get off of here for the night, to be kind to one another and blaze that trail. And here's an extra little holiday message that I've been throwing in here the last few streams I've done is if you have been having some issues or disagreements this past year with friends or family members, now's the time to extend that olive branch, folks. Now's the time to extend words of kindness, words of forgiveness, words of understanding, because no one is promised a tomorrow. Not even at Christmas time, we're not promised a tomorrow. Um, so just keep that in mind as we edge closer to the Christmas holiday, and open up the lines of communication with those that you may have had some disagreements or misunderstandings with this past
Yeah,
year.
and just like Clarence said, in It's a Wonderful Life, remember, George, no man is a failure who has friends.
That is exactly right. And we will leave you with that thought. And on that note, me and Chris are out of here, but we'll see everybody next time. Have a good night, folks. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone.